Right. Okay. So here we have got the introduction. I will be explaining the whole short story, but before that, we have to understand about the introduction. This Lahore attack is actually an extract from Kumara Sangakkara's Colin Cowdrey lecture, which was delivered on 5th of July in 2011 at Lord's, UK. So from his extract, from his speech, it was taken, an extract was taken from his speech, which was delivered on 5th of July 2011 by Kumara Sangakkara on at this certain lecture known as Colin Cowdrey lecture. Okay, then you can see the next point is that this short story illustrates about the national cricket team which was attacked in Pakistan on 3rd of March 2009 by 12 gunmen near the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore, Pakistan. So this topic was famous in 2010, 11, like that. Still it triggers in their minds. That means this is a kind of a terrorism activity actually. That means this short story illustrate about the national cricket team, our Sri Lankan cricket team who went there for Pakistan for 3 matches there. So the 2 matches were okay, but the 1 match only they had this had to face this tragedy actually. And 12 gunmen were there near the stadium in Lahore, Pakistan. And the third point, it says like this: the cricketers were on their way to play the 3rd day of the 2nd test against the Pakistan cricket team, where 6 members of the Sri Lankan national team were injured and 6 Pakistan policemen and 2 civilians were killed. Right. Luckily, our cricket team, none of them, except the injuries, none of them had to give up their life. So such incidents didn't occur. Thanks to God, such things didn't occur. Right. However, when we're reading the short story, you can understand the bravery, the brave of the bus driver there was the victory to be they survived because of the thanks to that bus driver who's like the kind of like the God who saved these people's lives, right? So that's about the introduction. Yes, did you both understood the things up to the introduction? Was it clear for you? Do you have any kind of doubts? Yes, any doubts do you have? Please speak if you have. No doubts, right? Akik, can you say, do you have any doubts?
Yes.
Right, okay. Let's move to the next one about the author, right? So the one who wrote this, as I said, is just a basic information about him. It's not an unknown person for us, but just for the sake, to know about him, I just gave this information that he was born in Madhulin Kandy in Sri Lanka. 1977, and he received his primary and secondary education at Trinity College, Kandy. And also he's known as a Sri Lankan international cricketer and a former captain of the national team of Sri Lanka, and several titles he have won, several matches he have won, lots of stuff to speak about him. But these are just basic information. Actually, we all know about him. Nothing to know about knew him as she's a Sri Lankan person, a famous person. Nothing new to be known or introduced about him. Right. Now, I just thought to let's move to the story and speak the rest. Okay, let's go for the story. So you can see the Lahore attack there. I'll read and explain you. I was fortunate that during my life, I never experienced violence in Sri Lanka firsthand. There have been so many bomb explosions over the years, but I was never in the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. So the story starts, you can see this is a first person narration or first person narrative style we are saying, because we have got the personal pronoun called I. right? Those are simple tips that we have to keep in our mind. So we have got here, I was fortunate that during my life, I never experienced violence in Sri Lanka firsthand. There have been so many bomb explosions over the years, but I was never in the but I was never in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? What do you mean by this? That means he speaks that this Sangakkar has never experienced any kind of violence while he was in Sri Lanka, though the terrorism was in heights, in climax point or in heights. Anyhow, he didn't face any type of violence or any tragedy like that. There have been so many bomb explosions over the years, but I was never in the wrong place at the wrong time. Actually, if you are going back to the past, you may have not such experiences. However, when I'm speaking about the bomb explosions in Sri Lanka, which was happened in Sri Lanka in various famous places, because normally the terrorists, their aims is to break down the economy of a country. Most of them, their intention is to that, because it's their intention to break down the power and the economy and to spread their own power, break down the power and the economy of the government and to spread their power. The main problem why this terrorism actually occurred is because of asking from a piece of land from Sri Lanka. And before it, the grassroots problem of terrorism is that Mavilaru incident, that they didn't ask the water bun tank, such incident occurred. So, and also the language problem, because of basic such things, because of those problems, the terrorism occurred. That's how the terrorism occurred. Just in slide summary, I said you. Right. However, many bomb explosions occurred in Sri Lanka. That actually most of them are, we know, bomb explosions is a thing that is unexpected. We cannot expect such things. We don't know this moment what will happen, in the next moment where will the bomb will explode. We don't know about such things. But luckily, this cricketer is saying, Sangakkar is saying that he was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. That means he has never faced any such kind of a tragedy or challenge in his life. In Colombo, apart from these occasional bombs, life was relatively normal. That means we know Colombo is the main city business center of Sri Lanka. So in Colombo, actually, the people in other areas also had a certain kind of a fear to visit Colombo, because Colombo was the main place of those terrorist bombing places. Because why? Colombo had the main business trade centers. That's what as I said you previously, their main aim or intention was to break down the economy. And also once back in past, they had bombed this Central Bank of Sri Lanka also once in the past. So likewise, but that means occasional, not always these bombings are occurring. That means one bombing is happening and let it people forget another bombing is happening. Like that, it was happening during that time. So, but though there were such bombings, the people's lives, however, they try to manage things. Here you can prove it. The people have the luxury of being physically detached from war. That means mentally they are attached to the war. That's what he's saying. Mentally, not only Colombo people, but also whole Sri Lankan, as a nation, we were attached to the war. Because though we didn't, sometimes we might not have any single experience about the war. But through the televisions, through the newspapers, everywhere, we saw the war. We saw how people were struggling. So therefore, however, we were in fear. And also, we must not forget the point that we were in fear. That means mentally every time shaking. We don't know at what time these LDT cadres will break their boundaries, or at what time they will jump to the other boundaries, like that. All Sri Lanka was in a burning situation with this one, in a burden actually. So therefore, but the people who lived in there, they're physically detached from the war. They didn't physically means they didn't have any type of physical problems with the war. That means here you can see from the next sentence, children went to school, people went to work, I played my cricket. So somewhat a kind of a selfishness is grown here, kind of. Why? Because people, I mean, no need to be in fear and be shivering at homes and wait. But kind of a selfishness is brought out there. Why? Because though the war is there, the people had their own living lifestyles without thinking much about it. Children went to school. That means children had their daily education, and people went to work. You can see the people are employed. They are going for their offices or however they are with their livelihoods. And I played my cricket. So he has a cricketer. He played. That means it seems nothing is there. Why? If a war is there, we know all the lifestyles are being broken down, right? That means lifestyles are shattered actually, we say, destructed. But here we cannot see such a thing now. Normally when we are comparing the war situations with other countries, this Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, like that. However, when you are comparing with these countries, most of the time we have seen the whole country is in a burden situation. Sri Lanka, which has a very small amount of land, like 65,610 square kilometers, like small amount we have, like, but in that within that land territory, even within that one, the people were like this. What do you mean by this? Let's see. In other parts of the country, though people were putting their lives in harm's way every day, either in the defense of their motherland or just trying to survive the geographical circumstances that made them inhabit a war zone. Now we know, now the war was not restricted to Colombo, especially the northern parts and the eastern parts of our country. We still know about that. That still we can, if we go and see their places, or if we just, when sometimes that showing by the TV, sometimes we can see still the houses have, which are being fired or bomb explode, still the houses, destructed houses, still they are in that condition. People are unable to build their houses or re-establish their houses, or reconstruct their houses. It's really unaffordable for those people, right? That means we know the eastern parts and the northern parts, they were in there, the war zone. That is a very famous point, and we know that is known as the war zone area. Colombo, why occasional bombs were occurring? Because in order to collapse the economy, in order to make the fear people, or if there's something like political campaigns or such things occurring, they were just trying to make some kind of fear, or some kind of important events with international something occurring. It was their intention to break down such things. That's why they catched Colombo, not for any other point. However, they're mainly living, these people were living in northern and eastern areas by bunkers and everything. They were having luxurious facilities were there, and the people were really struggling there actually. The people didn't know at what time they will be killed or at what time they will have to face their death. And the children, students who were there, most of the time they didn't have right, that means they didn't have time for the education actually. That's what it says. That means the people who lived in the war zone only had the pain of the war. They were struggling, right? That means though in a one country, only one part of our country was really struggling and surviving, trying to survive with this war. And the other parts of the country, people are acting normally. So there we can say, though Sri Lankans, though we always murmur that we are one nation, though we are like this, at that point we have to say that we have played a kind of a selfish role because we have never stopped our lifestyles while those people have stopped there. They had to destroy. I mean, no need to be like that. But however, same country, two conditions, two different conditions, the same country, two different conditions they had to come across, right? Up to that point, are the things clear for you all?
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Yes, Akik, is it clear for you? Do you have any doubts there?
No, miss.
Right, okay. Let's move for the next part. For them, avoiding bullets, shells, mines, and grenades was imperative for survival. This was an experience that I could not relate to. I had great sympathy and compassion for them, but had no real experience with which I could grow parallels. For them, avoiding bullets, shells, mines, and grenades was imperative for survival. There was an experience that I could not relate to. I had great sympathy and compassion for them, but had no real experience with which I could draw parallels. So here he tries to say that the people who lived in the war zone, it was a kind of a difficulty to survive without these bullets, shells, mines, and grenades. Every time what happened, the people who were living in these war zones, their mind was triggering there. They had to live in a certain kind of a fear. That means every time, just like we are saying that with the technique like auditory image, we are saying what we can just hear. Always their ears are just having a type of the bomb blasting and everything, such things are their minds are triggering and their ears are working like that. So but when this our author who wrote this short story, Sangakkara, is saying that he had the great sympathy and compassion for those people until, but he had such sympathy and compassion. Why? Before that, he didn't felt such sympathy or much compassion towards such people. Why? Because he had the real experience. He had the real experience for few minutes. But he thought, now at the end of the story, we can understand he's saying, if we had such a kind of fear for these few minutes, how much great fear that maybe those people having. Our country, Sri Lanka, was nearly 3 decades. That means 30 years we were suffering from this war. But most of the time, we didn't feel its horrorness, its violence. We didn't feel it. Why? Because we didn't have such experiences to our lives, real experiences. Until it's coming to us, we didn't know it's such a thing, right? That's the nature. Then next line we can say, that was until we toured Pakistan in 2009, we set off to play 2 tests in Karachi and Lahore. The first test played on a feather bed passed without great incident. Now, what do you mean by this feather bed here? Feather bed means not a bed made out of feathers actually. That means without any difficulties, right? Without any difficulties, without any tragedies, or without any kind of sorrow or unhappiness. Feathers, we know feathers are something very soft, smooth, and comfortable, right? So that means they had played their first test match played on a what? Very comfortable. They had very comfortably without any issues. They had very successfully, they had played it, right? Then let's move to the next part and see the second test. Right? The second test was also meandering along with us, piling up a first big innings when we departed for the ground on day 3. Having been asked to leave early instead of waiting for the Pakistan bus, we were anticipating a day of hard toil for the bowlers. At the back of the bus, the fast bowlers were loud in their complaints. I remember Dilan Tushara being particularly vocal, complaining that his back was near breaking point. He joked that he wished a bomb would go off so we could all leave Lahore and go back home. Not 30 seconds had passed when we heard what sounded like firecrackers going off. Suddenly, a shout came from the front, "Get down." Sorry, they are shooting at the bus. Okay. Now we have come to certain type of a critical point. The second test was sort of meandering along with piling up first begins innings when we departed for the ground at the day 3. Now what's happening? Now he says that they were getting ready, prepared for the third day, and having been asked to leave early instead of waiting for the Pakistan bus, we were anticipating a day of hard toil for the bowlers. And at the back of the bus, now at the back of the bus, what's happening? The fast bowlers were loud in their complaints, and this certain bowler who is named as Tilan Tushar, he was just having his jokes that saying that something, if a bomb would go off, that they could no need to play, they can leave Lahore and go back home. It was a kind of a joke, but within this joke, something like a suspense were mixed. That means what will happen next? But they, and also curiosity. What will happen next? If it like this happens, like that. It's just a slip of the tongue with the words, but they didn't know actually in the next minute. In a flash, within the next minute, what happened? Not 30 seconds passed by saying that thing, actually it happened. What thought of feeling they might have at that moment? He said it for a joke and it really happened. Okay. Not 30 seconds had passed when we heard what sounded like firecrackers going off. Suddenly a shout came from the front, "Get down, they're shooting at the bus." We can have kind of a visual image. What kind of it? That means they are the certain gunmen are shooting or firing at the bus. And the people somehow are shouting that they are shooting the bus. Please get up. The reaction was immediate. Everyone dived for cover and took shelter on the side or behind the seats. Did these players got off from the bus? No. If they got off from the bus, the incident will be more terrible. Because the gunmen are out. What will happen? Can these people run and be safe? No. So what happened? The reaction was immediate. They hadn't any time to think or do any plans or like that. What happened? We can have another kind of a visual image. Now the atmosphere is very terrible, violent, horror. What happened was they were bending down themselves like as divers. They were what happening? They were just like lying down themselves on the back of the bus. And this bus is not a very big bus. We can see with very little space. We were all lying on top of each other in order to be safe from those firing. They had to lie down on each other. What a condition it might be at that time. As bullets started bursting through the bus, all we could do was stay still and quite hoping and praying to avoid death or injury. As bullets started bursting through the bus, all we could do was stay still and quite hoping and praying to avoid death or injury. Now what's happening? The bullets are all, we can have a visual image, all the sides, from all the sides, the bullets are coming off from every directions. And these people are in the bus lying on each other, lying down. And all we could stay still means without moving and quite hoping and praying to avoid death or injury. Now, at this moment, we know as any individual, any person, what would they remember at this point? At this moment, they remember their God or their religious leader. They were hoping and they were praying to avoid death or injury for anybody. Suddenly, Mahela, who sits at the back of the bus, shouts, saying he thinks that he has been hit in the shin. I'm lying next to Tilan. He groans in pain as bullet hits him in the back of his thigh. So the Mahela says that he's shouting and that he feels that he says that he has a kind of attack. He was shot by the gunman. As I turn my head to look at him, I feel something whiz past my ear and a bullet thuds into the side of the seat, the exact spot where my head had been few seconds earlier. See how violent and graphic this very terrible incident is this. As I turn my head to look at him, I feel something whisked past my ear. A bullet thuds into the side of the seat and the exact spot where my head had been a few seconds earlier. I feel something hit my shoulder and it goes numb. I know I had been hit, but I was just relieved and praying I was not going to be hit in the head. Now he felt that, this our writer Sangakara has felt that he also had been shot, right? He also felt that something on his shoulder, but he was just praying, oh, it didn't happen to my head. So next we can see Taranga Paranvitana on his debut tour, which means his first tour. It's also next to me. He stands up, bullets flying all around him, shouting, I have been hit, as he holds his blood-soaked chest. He collapsed into his seat, apparently unconsciousness. What happened actually? This the first his first play actually, right? So what happened? We can have another visual image how the bullets are flying around him, and he shout, "I have been hit," as he holds his blood-soaked chest. He's saying. And he collapses and he falls down onto his seat and apparently unconscious. I see him and I think, sorry, oh my God, you are out first ball, run out the next innings, and now you have been shot. What a terrible first tour. Okay, let's move for the next. It is strange how clear your thinking is. I did not see my life flash by. There was no insane panic. There was absolute clarity and awareness of what was happening at that moment. Right? It is strange how clear your thinking is. I did not see my life flash by. There was no insane panic. There was absolute clarity and awareness of what was happening at that moment. I hear the bus roar into life and start to move. Now, until this moment, what was happening? Was the bus moving anywhere? No, the bus was not moving. See how brave the driver. If the bus started to move and go around and around, what will happen? Another incident, something shocking, terrible will happen. Now what happened? The bus roar into life and start to move. Up to now, the bus was in a terrible condition, was not moving. That's what it says. Now I hear the bus roar into life. That means now again the bus started, gave some life for these people and start to move. Dilshan is screaming at the driver, drive, drive. We speed up, and we are finally inside the safety of the stadium. And finally what happened? They were taken to the stadium. The braveness of the driver. Okay, he was also being praised by these cricketers because he is the one who saved their lives, right? Okay, up to that point, right? Are the things clear? Do you have any kind of doubts? Yes?
It's clear, teacher.
Yes. Right, okay, good. Let's move. Yes. There's a rush to get off the bus. Now what happens? Now there's a kind of a rush. Tharanga Paranitan stands up. He is still bleeding, has a bullet lodged lightly in his sternum. The body of the bus tempering its velocity enough to be stopped by the bone. See how now this incident is not quite a very beautiful one. It's violence. Violence is there and terrible, very frightening atmosphere. right? The atmosphere, if we check in this incident, what kind of atmosphere might be there? Very filled with horror, rage, and everything. So now these people are getting down, and Tilan is helped off the bus. In the dressing room, there's a mixture of emotions: anger, relief, joy. Players and coaching staff are being examined by paramedics. There are some kind of exactly, paramedics means not really doctors, but these people have medical knowledge, like the one who are doing surgeries and some like that, who are being checking these people who have big wounds, small wounds, like that, checking and taking quite immediate actions for those people. So Tilan and Paramitan are taken by ambulance to the hospital. So these two players are being admitted to the hospital. We all realize that what some of our fellow Sri Lankans experienced every day for nearly 30 years. At that point, what happens? They said that all the cricket team who went there felt that how Sri Lankans for 30 years, they have been experiencing this kind of thing. For them, only for a few minutes, or maybe if we take overall, maybe 1 hour, it suggests like that. But how many, what kind of a duration our Sri Lankan civilians were suffering from this? Nearly 30 years. If such a horrible condition took place for this 1 hour in this incident, how much of things would have occurred for 30 years? How many lives? What kind of a disaster was it? It's really horrible, right? There was a new respect and air for their courage and selflessness. Actually, a kind of a courage. The soldiers played a major role there, right? Without being selfish, they try to save our motherland for the whole nation to live together. So therefore, he says that a new kind of courage and selflessness, that means there was a new respect for their courage and selflessness. Their new kind of respect had been grown inside their hearts than before about the people who are contributing towards, contributing means for the to be have a say, to save the lives of people from this war condition. Okay, so that's what he says. At until that moment, they didn't have any kind of real experience. They know it is a war. Actually, no, there is a war like this. Is people are we are fighting for the borders and several other things like that. But they didn't know this war is such a cruel thing, making people's life a hell actually. Right? So they didn't know, they didn't have such experience like this. The terror is like that. The terrorism is like that. They didn't feel it like that. So then it's like this. A few hours after the attack, we were airlifted to the Lahore Air Force Base. What happened was a few hours after the attack, before that, it is notable how quickly we got over the attack on us. Although we were physically injured mentally, we had strong. We are Sri Lankans. Though we are physically injured, we say that Sri Lankans have the mentality, a good mental status. We are a nation that is not falling down easily, that cannot be fallen down by other people very easily. Such a brave, strong nation is known as Sri Lanka. Though the Pakistan's the several kind of a team, several kind of terrorism group tried to held down these people, but they couldn't break down the mentality of these cricketers. They couldn't do it. Maybe their intention was that to stop these people, so they So they will have a kind of fear, and they won't again go for the test matches in the international stadium. So they won't play, and their motivation, their courage, and everything will be grown weak. So again, another cricket team won't be grown in Sri Lanka. Their intentions may be like that, but they couldn't stay right. That means their target was not such easy thing. Though they injured these people physically, their courage was strong, right? A few hours after the attack, we were airlifted to the Lahore Air Force Base. After the attack, they were airlifted for the Lahore Air Force Base. Ajanta Mendes, his head swathed in bandages after multiple shrapnel wounds, suggests a game of poker. Thilan has been brought back, sedated but fully consciousness, to be with us, and we make jokes at him and smiles back. Now they are in a kind of a good condition. Now they have been given some kind of treatments. We were shot and generals were thrown at us. We were injured, and yet we were not cowed. We were not down out. We are Sri Lankans, we thought to ourselves, and we are tough, and we will get through hardship, and we will overcome because our spirit is strong. Now we know in sports, if you have any kind of experiences in sports, what they say for you is, win or lose, you have to accept it. Not only winning or losing is inside the games. There is no